Hello and good afternoon on this 16th day of October. This is Victoria Hill, the Public Information Officer for the City of Billings. We're just 2 days away from ballots being sent out, absentee ballots in Billings for the Parks and Rec bond. Of course, there's also some other races that you'll see on there, one for City Council and one for municipal court judge. So ballot is just one of the issues that you'll see, bond is just one of the issues that you will see on that ballot. So this afternoon, we do have two guests with us. We have our City Administrator, Chris Kukulski. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. And then we also have our Finance Director, Andy Zoeller, here to talk about the cost side of things. So we've had a lot of questions. We've gone out, we've done the basic presentations on what this bond is about, what it would include, but the community has questions beyond that, wanting to know why are we putting this before the voters right now when there's, we just got our property tax assessments, which have gone up significantly. We have a homeless issue, housing crisis. There's so much more going on in this community. So, Chris, can you tell us why is it that the city decided right now at this point to put this before the voters?
Well, it really backs up to their commitment to improve the health and safety of Billings through 5 adopted strategic goals. They did that back in early 2022, but actually all 5 of these we've been working on since early 19. One of them is safety directly, improving the safety of the community. It is also to continue investing in the infrastructure of our community. It is to improve the built environment, what gets built quality. And the 4th item was to increase our investments in park, recreation, trails, and cultural amenities. So all 4 of those areas we are working at. Deliberately, the 2 public safety levies came first. That's why the voters were asked in 2019 and 2020 to do that before we came back at this time with Park, Rec, and Trail. It also follows about several years of work with stakeholders and community groups. All those have been a part of master planning processes over the years in Billings, and so many decades have gone on since we've made substantial investments that their determination, their request to the City Council was, it is time to do this now.
Mm-hmm. And earlier today, I did have our police chief in, and we were also talking to Sergeant Nate West about crime prevention through environmental design. And people may feel that since this Parks, Recreation, and Trails bond is on the ballot, that we aren't concerned about the jail crowding, that we aren't concerned about some of the homeless issues that are going on in our community. But the way I describe it or picture it to myself is like a puzzle piece, and the parks and trails and recreation is just one more piece of the puzzle that is needed in this community to get to a healthy and safe place. Is that what you would say, Chris?
Absolutely. I would say just looking a little bit over the last 30 days. So in the last 30 days, we spent 2 complete days with dozens of community stakeholders on a strategic plan for a family justice center. Just today, I spent over an hour with our Substance Abuse Connect and Continuum of Care, homeless focus and substance abuse focus. Also today, had an hour-long meeting on the jail issue between key leaders across the city. So we are approaching all of these issues simultaneously as they're all facing our community. And public safety remains top of the list.
Mm-hmm. And Andy, now I want to go to you to talk about the cost of this bond. People are going to see $143 million listed on the ballot, and there is some concern that maybe the city isn't being transparent about the cost. What's the case here, and can you explain maybe why people are feeling or thinking that way?
Sure, you bet. So the ballot will say, do you authorize the city to borrow up to $143 million? But just like if you buy a car, use the loan, or buy your first home, you're going to the bank to borrow that money. The city can't borrow for free either. So yeah, we'll be paying back that principal amount plus the interest. But also on the ballot is a representation of the estimated cost for, I believe it's $100,000, $300,000, and $600,000 home. And that represents the cost of principal and interest. So if you look at that and you think, I live in about a $300,000 home, you'll see what the estimated tax increase is for you, and that is for both principal and interest. So, when it's state law how the language is, so that's what we're following. But additionally, I would say it's pretty common, right? If somebody says, "Hey, how much did you pay for your house?" You don't tell them, "Oh, I paid principal and interest over 30 years to get to this much." You say, "Well, I paid $250,000." So, you know, I wouldn't characterize it as misleading at all. It certainly is how people communicate. It's how the state law says it must be communicated. And then the impact of the homeowner represents both repayment of principal and interest.
And what people are seeing right now is a breakdown, a chart based on the value of your home, how much you can expect to pay if this bond does pass, annual cost, and then further broken down into monthly cost. And if people are interested in figuring out what their exact situation is going to be for this, I'm going to show you really quickly here that you can go to the City of Billings website. Just go to billingsmt.gov/parksbond, and you're going to see a bunch of different information. So if you are curious about the cost and tax information, there's a calculator just right up top at the screen there that you can enter in your own home's value. And just personally speaking, when I bought my house a couple of years ago, it was valued at $255, and now I think it's into like $348 or something like that. So let's cross our fingers that this actually works. I know it does. So for me, this is what I will pay annually, the 183.27. Break it down by 12. I'm not a human calculator, so I'm not going to attempt to do that right now. Maybe Andy can do that. But if you are curious about the cost, that is what you'd be looking at based on your own home's value. So just plug that number in there without any commas and calculate. And so, Chris, let's also talk now about there's a lot going on. There's 16 different project sites. I mean, we have trails, we have community centers, we have the multi-generational rec center. Why is this all being presented to us in one bundled package rather than, hey, I would rather just get a South Park pool, or I'd rather just get a rec center, or I'd rather just get, improvements to Castle Rock Park? Why is this all together in one right now?
So there's several reasons behind that. One of which is as it ties to reducing crime in our community, it is about activating spaces across our community. That's why you're seeing community centers being added north, south, east, and west in the community to offer recreational programs for kids, families, seniors, closer to their neighborhoods. Also, it became a reality through all of the debates and conversations over the past few years that if we were to take this and break it up into 3, 4, or 5 chunks, trails 1 year, community centers the next, the rec center, the parks, we would be going back to the voters each and every year for the next 4 or 5 years. And would we be splitting each other all up versus saying, you know what, collectively, let's come together as a community and make these investments together, both on the fundraising side and on the bonded amount that voters are being asked to tackle, because there's also several $1 million, a minimum of $6 million that must be raised privately, with an additional $6 million in grants in order for us to get that private buy-in. And that's across the projects too, rather than pitting projects against each other in fundraising.
And let's talk now about the operation cost. People have lots of questions surrounding that. Andy, is there any way to tell at this time how much the city is going to have to put forward to open up the multi-generational center, keep it running, keep it staffed? Same with the parks and their additions as well.
Sure, you bet. So I guess online right now on the city's website, there are reports that were done by Ballard King, which is a national firm that does pro forma statements on operations of rec centers primarily, and they were hired to do that for the city of Billings for this rec center. So I am not an expert in that area, but they are, and there's a lot of good information on there. Primarily, the operations of this facility won't come from, well, not primarily, they will not come from the bonds. That's going to build the facility. To operate it, your funding sources are going to be user fees. These are monthly memberships or people bringing tournaments in, things like that. Sponsorships, naming rights, those are very valuable. They'll be used to help offset some of the operational costs. And then the Tourism Business Improvement District, or TBID, they're working with City Council to come to an agreement to help provide potentially up to $800,000 per year to help offset these costs. So there's a lot of revenue sources coming in to help get this going.
The only thing I'd add to that T-bid is it is the bed tax.
Sure.
So that's what we're talking about there. We're talking about the hoteliers have approached the city and said, we realize via the study, Ballard King, this will not make money. We will cover the operational loss by increasing our bed tax locally from $2 to $4. Why would they do that? Because the economic analysis shows about $25 million in annual economic activity because of the facility. And where are most of those people going to be? If they're not locals using the facility, they're coming into town because a tournament's being held or they're traveling. So that's the relationship, and that's one of the biggest financial chunks on the operational side.
And Andy, I'm going to throw one more question at you. We have also received the question about the recreational marijuana tax, and why isn't the city just using its cut or chunk of that to put towards these projects instead of asking the community to support it financially?
So, well, there's a lot to that, but I guess the easiest thing is, the city gets, I'm going to round figures, $600,000 a year in marijuana tax. And currently, City Council allocates that largely to public safety. So, they've used that to help reduce or to make investments to public safety. So that's the first answer. The second answer is we don't have the authority to use those funds to borrow. We can't go. The state legislature actually doesn't really limit cities to the extent they can borrow without voter approval. We could not use these funds as a direct revenue source for debt. But more importantly, like I said, they've been allocated for public safety primarily since we've been getting them, I believe, starting a year to 18 months ago.
So I think that's a little bit more of an understanding of how state government and city government works, rather than just it'd be nice if it worked that way, but it doesn't quite. There's rules and laws in place. And Chris, let's turn our attention now to the concern that people have about priority. And all right, we have 16 projects, and how do I know that my neighborhood project won't be put to the back burner or won't just be scratched out altogether? What is being done or what has been done to make sure that that's not the case and it doesn't happen?
So in addition to the council taking the very legal, technical steps to put the bond in front of the voters, they, above and beyond that, adopted a resolution. That resolution's, I think, 7 pages long, that really gets into the specifics of what the intent is to invest in the various parks. There's a chart there that tells you the dollar amount, and then it outlines the various mechanisms via steering committees for each project, those steering committees being made up of stakeholders, advising the parks director and myself, ultimately on up to the city council, on how projects are invested in. So that resolution is a great document to read relative to, if I'm unsure as to how this money is going to be spent, that gives you a really good indication of, based on all the information we have today, how we're going to follow through on those promises. That when it says $10 million in South Park and $12 million in Castle Rock Park and 100 or 85 of 110 for the multi-generational rec center, that those dollars really are allocated for each of those particular projects.
And I was just scrolling through the actual document while you were talking about it. Like Chris said, if you go to billingsmt.gov/parksbond 2023, you'll see the menu on the left-hand side here, and you can look for bond resolution, and it'll take you to this page. This is just a basic summary of what it's all about. And if you want to read the full, 8 or 9 page document, you can click on the image, and then it'll take you to all the entire document itself, the entire resolution for you to check out there. All right, and going into the future, Andy, how can we make sure that there might be a possibility that the cost of this bond could go down over time? Or are there any other opportunities, I guess, for the city to gather funding that doesn't necessarily need to come directly from the taxpayer? Or what are those opportunities looking like?
Sure. So in that resolution you just mentioned, it describes that there will be private donations to help offset this cost. So the question to the voters is, worst case scenario. Likely what we'll see, and we're aware of commitments that exist today, that there will be private donations coming in to help offset some of those costs. Now they're going to come in, over 10 to 20 years typically. But when we built the library, we had the exact same thing. We had a large donation, and it came in 1 year, 1 year at a time over 10 years. So while it doesn't reduce the overall cost of the project, it does directly reduce the annual tax that goes on tax statements to pay that cost. So that we will see those. We're aware that they're already coming in, and there's a large effort to get more of that.
The other piece I'd add to it is, fortunately, Billings has had a growing tax base for some 7 decades. So this is a fixed debt amount. As Andy said earlier, we estimate a 4% interest rate over 20 years. Some may say 4%, that's not realistic in today's day and age. It is. Municipal bonds, so tax-exempt bonds. We just did one earlier in the year at 3.76, I want to say it was.
3.6. Yeah.
3.6.
Yep.
So it's a fixed debt amount over a 20-year period, and as our tax base grows, additional houses, additional apartments, additional businesses, that fixed debt amount is paid over the growing tax base. So gradually, and it's slow, but a reappraisal cycle, that mill levy number should go down. It has for the past several decades to pay that debt amount. So what we're talking about here is the peak of what it is, all debt being on, assuming it all comes on at once here in this next year.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to chat with us today. I know there's so much more that we can keep talking about when it comes to the Parks, Recreation, and Trails bond, but we will have more guests here in the podcast studio throughout the week. We're going to talk about public health. We're going to talk about the impact on attracting talent and all that. And Chris, was there one more thing that you wanted to say?
If you go to billingsmt.gov, the excellent website you've put together and a ton of information, people can get that by going to that site.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. All right, well, I will let you guys go. And again, join us later this week for some more information on the bond. If you have any questions, throw them my way, and we will get those answered via message or even during one of our podcasts. Thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.